Why is evangelism important to the church? And why is it important to the modern church? I like what this individual said. The mark of a great church is not its seating capacity, but it's its sending capacity. Have you considered that? So many of us mark our accomplishment by the size of our building, the size of our organization, the size of our ministry. If you're an individual, you might mark your effectiveness by the number of people you have witnessed to or the number of people that you have won to the Lord. I don't think that God is holding that type of standard. I believe that the capacity of the great church is our ability to mobilize people just like you and me to get out there with the good news and give us the tools that make it very easy to do. I'd ask you this question today. When you consider the importance of evangelism to the modern church, I would ask you, as well as any church leader or any congregation, are we gazing or are we engaging? Another way we could say it is simply, are you a spectator or are you a participator? When Jesus was making his ascension after his resurrection and after he had spent time with his disciples, they were looking intently into the sky as Jesus was going, when suddenly two men dressed in white stood beside them. And they said these words, "Men of Galilee, why do you stand here looking into the sky? This same Jesus whom you have seen has been taken from you will come back in the same way." You know, the great question that many people are asking and have asked throughout the ages is simply this: move, God, move. And we sometimes as evangelists laugh when we hear that statement because we say people are wondering why God isn't moving, and perhaps God is wondering why people are not moving. You and I can be the solution to that problem simply by being the ones who are willing to move on the behalf of God. Now, I remember this, that when we initiated a great evangelism movement across the ex-Soviet territories, and as I stood there in the grounds that were around me, and you'll have moments in your life that will mark you, and they'll mark your ministry, and they'll mark your understanding of evangelism. But as I stood there and I watched the crowds coming over the hill, and if you can understand the way the buildings were in that hour, it looked like the 1950s in the United States. And we were putting up tents. And so the young musicians from Belarus, they struck up the piano, and it sounded literally like bluegrass music that you would hear in the central part of the United States. And then I looked down and I'm walking on this straw, just as the old tent of revivalists might have done a generation before. And then I looked up across the hill as I saw the people walking down the hills to come to the tent. And I heard someone say this: "Isn't it amazing how God is moving?" And I looked around at all of those young people who were there. And I looked at all of those tents that our partners had purchased. And I looked at all of the struggle and the people who had been involved in getting those tents through borders and clearing customs and making the opportunity for evangelism possible. And I thought, yes, God, you empowered us to do this, but we moved on your behalf. So I encourage you today to recognize that the importance of evangelism is not that the church will do it. It's not that someone else will do it someday, but you and I have been empowered by God to be his voice, to be his hands, to be his heart in this world today.